Everyone, welcome to today's Water Cooler Chat, where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's orchestrating, delegating, broadcasting, transcoding, or anything to do with the Livepeer network. We're here to ask questions and get answers. So we have quite a few topics to go through today, and as a few of the core developers here, and I think the most popular topic to get us kicked off with was around the grant for the video storage, and this was originally mentioned by John. So, John, do you want to get us kicked off with what this grant is and just an overview of kind of what's happening and what the topic is?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go over an introduction of the grant. So this all started when I was trying to run a broadcaster node myself, and I was playing around with the recording feature, and it discovered that when you can record video, but it records it to sort of a proprietary format. It uses a JSON playlist instead of M3U8. I think that's for performance reasons, but it does record that out to S3 storage. And then later discovered there is a recordings handler on the broadcaster that presumably you should be able to play back those recordings through. I haven't found that to be working so far. In looking at some of the patterns, some things didn't add up. And then after talking with the core team a bit more, it sounds like that recording functionality within the broadcaster is not really being supported today or not being used, and that Catalyst is mostly replaced that on the Livepeer Inc. side. Nonetheless, during that time, I built on top of the code that was already there that stores video to S3 storage. Instead of storing only JSON playlists, it'll now store M3U8 files. And the benefit to that is that when storing to S3 storage, a lot of providers have a CDN cache that comes with it. And this way, a broadcaster node could write their recordings directly to S3 and then play it off of the CDN edge without having to go through the broadcaster. I believe that this change is positive because, first, I think it fixes the broken playback of the recordings. And there wasn't really any documentation around that either. And then also it provides a really good turnkey solution for like playing video off of, let's say, a decentralized CDN, which there are some providers out there that are doing S3 with CDN edges like Protobox and StoreJ. So that's kind of the gist of the technical reason for doing it. The grant also includes shoring up the documentation around that on the broadcaster side so that we may even look into fixing the recordings handler so that you can use it in that way. But the grant was intended to mostly go ahead and get this feature added to Go Livepeer so that you could record to S3 and then play it back over the associated cache.
Wow, that's amazing. When did this all come about? I see that is this currently in application for the grant? Has this been awarded a grant? Where's the process with this? Where are we at?
So we submitted the grant on June 7th. Development began around April, and we're currently at a point where it's fully working. From a development perspective, you can record a video even beyond an hour long, and then you can play it back over S3 storage. That part is working. We don't have anything like where you can seek back, but once the video is done playing, you can play it in its entirety, and you can seek after it's fully recorded and played. Another benefit to this, by the way, is that through S3, you can actually watch the live video over that CDN cache as well, which was another kind of just inherent functionality that came with it. But that's where we're at. I mean, the grant, there's been a little feedback here. There's been some comments. I think Rafal was suggesting that we deprecate this recordings handler. And I mentioned Eli because in the code history, it looked like he had developed some of this years back, maybe in 2021. So I was kind of curious, where it was in its development, and it sounds like there's a lot of focus on Catalyst at this point for the recording. So I was hoping to be able to reuse what we've done. Not so particular on the grant funding. I mean, the work's been done, and like I see there's value here, but also want to make sure that it's fitting with the direction of the core team, and that we're building something that's going to be supported. But one of the arguments for using this over Catalyst, I think, is that for new developers building on Livepeer, if you just go and get the Go Livepeer repository and run that application, it's a turnkey solution. You don't have to add. Catalyst has a lot of pieces and parts to it. So that's kind of the gist.
Very good. Eli or Hans, do you guys want to jump in with any comments around this grant?
Sure. I can certainly give some context as to the recording feature that we're talking about as well, and then maybe take it from there to talk about Catalyst more broadly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's interesting to think all the way back to when we were working on that original recording feature. How it sort of happened was we had the partner that many of you have now heard of in this little media server called Mist Server that had helped us get sort of an initial something getting toward production grade live streaming set up for our users, but we weren't sure if the partnership was going to go anywhere, and so we wanted, and we knew we wanted recording, but we weren't super confident that we wanted to commit to Mist Server quite yet. They were this external company we hadn't worked with for very long. So in that context, we had a Mist Server-based streaming solution that we wanted to add recording to, and we weren't at the time certain we wanted to add the recording in sort of a Mist Server native way, right? So we implemented it using sort of the only available hook left to us, which was in the Go Livepeer broadcaster node, right? So, at the end of the day, in order to get transcoding happening, the server needed to send video segments into Go Livepeer. Go Livepeer gets them transcoded on the public network orchestrators and sends them back to Mist. And so we said, well, this is sort of the option available to us. All of the video data is flowing into and out of this node. So let's implement recording here, and using that technique, we shipped the very first version of recording in Livepeer Studio, which was not called Livepeer Studio at the time. It never worked very well. I can speak to so we talked about like the M3U8 playlists and the and like the weird JSON metadata format it used. Mm-hmm. So the reason that exists is actually because we needed to accommodate multiple broadcasters, because Mist would start sending it to one, and then if there's a network connection error or something, it would send it to a different broadcaster. Both of those would record to S3. No one of them could be in charge of like a M3U8 manifest, right? So what we needed to do was record to two different locations, and then when it came time for playback, basically combine the two into one coherent output, and that's what we were using those weird JSON blobs for. I'm getting at in my description that this never worked very, very well. There were a few problems. One is sort of getting at what I described. It was never, the hook we were using here was never designed as a recording hook. It was transcoding, and so Mist would do things like get some strange data back and send the same segment again to get transcoded for whatever, any number of reasons. And now that segment's in the recording playlist twice, and it would show up multiple times. And so maybe there's cases where we'd give up on transcoding for some reason, and then recording would stop. And there were just like a million corner cases like that. So that was where we were. And then, of course, we started deepening our relationship with Mist server and using Mist for more and more things. Mist also released their all the code that was backing this under the public domain license. So we were much more comfortable leaning into that partnership a little bit more. And so that's what eventually took us to Catalyst in the Catalyst-based recording process. And the cool thing about that is we've essentially got this behavior working already in that context. Catalyst can save using there's a binary called Livepeer Catalyst uploader that integrates with Mist, and that is capable of saving all of the segments to S3 storage. And once a live stream concludes, it writes an M3U8 manifest containing all of those segments. And so then that can be played back directly from S3 storage or proxied again through Mist if you wanted to use more features in there. So
sounds like you've thought quite deeply about this for quite some time.
Yeah, deeper than I'd like. I'll pause there. I have more to say about the the relationship between Go Livepeer and Catalyst going forward, but I can stop there if there's any questions on anything I just said.
Well, that gives some really good context I was missing. So it sounds like one of the main issues is that Mist server would pick different broadcasters. And doing that, it would sort of interrupt the recording, and it would have to stitch that all together at the end of, if it had multiple broadcasters that it ran through. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Or another case was if we deployed a new version of a broadcaster. There's no option for us to shut down all of the existing live streams to release a new broadcaster. We need to be able to sort of seamlessly move from one to another. So there were just a few different cases there where it would involve sort of stitching together the results from a couple of different bees.
Yeah, one of them that I saw was if the video gets over 1 hour long, it's continually building this JSON playlist in memory, and at the 1 hour mark, it would segment it off and create another JSON playlist, and then again at the end of the stream. Well, it doesn't currently stitch them together, but the work that I did stitches those together into an M3U8.
Totally. Yeah, and in a world where you're dealing with one broadcaster, and I'm presuming RTMP ingest into Go Livepeer there, that model definitely makes more sense.
Right, it would have worked. Yeah, I did not realize that Mist server taking that ingest could choose different broadcasters to send it to.
Yeah, and that was just a redundancy, basically a fallback in the off chance a server falls over or something like that. We fed Mist a couple different regions it could transcode in, or I shouldn't say transcode in this context. A couple different regions it could connect to a Livepeer broadcaster, so there was always a fallback available.
So I just want to confirm though that this is not like Eli, you mentioned just S3 just momentarily in your introduction, but this is not a place to store. This is actually the formatting of the file. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're in both cases, both with old Go Livepeer recording and with the new Catalyst recording model. What we're talking about is the ability to write to, I say S3 as a shorthand for any S3 compatible storage, right? We've used Google branded S3 for some time, as well as S3 APIs into decentralized storage, like Storage supports S3 compatible APIs as well. So
right, like even IPFS or Arweave, like any one of these that are compatible with it, basically. So this is upgrading this way of handling the recording, and then you can hand that off to any storage provider you'd like.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're discussing is just our various attempts at over the years saving basically 1-2 second chunk of video at a time to some of these storage approaches, and then once you've accomplished that, how do you go about playing back from that storage?
Right, of course. Hans, do you you're part of the Livepeer grants committee? Do you want to comment on this?
I just want to say that first of all, this has been a super fascinating discussion. Generally, the grant itself, our team loved the spirit of it because ideally moving away from sort of the proprietary JSON format that like we've been using to record or at least keep track of all the broadcasting segments, recorded segments, excuse me. And then of course, being able to easily, play back the recordings from any S3 compatible storage just seems like a perfect, like a right step towards, decentralization, what we're trying to achieve at Livepeer. But then of course, the discussions of how that's implemented, how that should work, and then ultimately like how maintenance looks forward, assuming that, if there is a difference in opinion from like the core devs versus like sort of like some of the experimentation that Elite Proxy's been doing. Those are sort of like kind of like the hairy issues that like why I want this discussion out in the open. I don't really have a dog in this fight, whichever way it goes. Ideally we just like kind of come up with like what's what is it like. Eli could probably speak more to this, like what's on the roadmap, like what he feels is like probably kind of like the direction we want to go, but also from the orchestrator's perspective, like obviously Elite Proxy had a problem, an issue with the current implementation. We wanted a solution, hack together solution, and it seems good in theory. The question is, can it be maintained moving forward?
Very cool. I see other people are a part of this project. We have Ben and Mike Zoop. Do either one of you want to comment on this and give us an update?
I'll let Zoop go. Yeah, go ahead, Zoop.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the thing here for Ben and myself, it really was, John's working hard, deep in the Go Livepeer, and we've been through several grants. So we figured we could team up. We're all part of, a group that like is closely knit together, and we work and help each other. So we literally wanted to take his efforts and get it out into the Go Livepeer stack and have this discussion, get the grant created, and make sure that work that he's doing is of value. Because again, from our perspective, if we look at features and capabilities of Video Miner Pool, being able to store video as a broadcaster and then being able to serve that through a CDN, decentralized or otherwise, was a critical component for anyone who wants to build a media platform that can do this. And I think the three are like a trinity. They go together: storage, ingest, and wide playback over a CDN. This is enterprise grade solutions require these things. So I think the part that probably was not clear to the three of us when we initially filed the grant was what it looked like in the Catalyst world. We know Catalyst had a role to play, but we weren't sure exactly where the recordings fit in, because we weren't running Catalyst, and we're still working to get Catalyst up and running. But we just looked at it as like, hey, Go Livepeer, broadcasters involved in the stack, let's get it in there. So I think it was just really a difference of opinion. I still believe that there's value here in the Livepeer broadcaster. I think, to John's point, is Catalyst is a bit more involved. There's a lot more pieces and parts to put together. So if you're really looking for a simple and easy Go Livepeer only approach to doing it, what John has proposed works very well. But I think to Eli's point, there's a lot of corner cases that could make this not effective at scale for larger platforms that wanted to leverage storage. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong. It's really, is there value? How does it fit into the puzzle? And then, can it coexist with Catalyst, or should it really just not exist at all? Deprecate recording from the broadcaster of Go Livepeer and just literally let all of it go through the Mist Catalyst setup. So, and I think that's where we are right now.
That's spot on, Mike. Yeah, thank you. I know you were working on a streaming site yourself and was interested in this ability, but I don't think either of us have dug into Catalyst that much.
Yeah, we've been focusing on that broadcaster, but not, we haven't really had a chance to dive deeply into Catalyst. So, and I guess that's why we were a little bit off base in terms of staying with the roadmap.
One question.
Yeah.
Oh, a question I have for you, Eli. Does Catalyst currently send any flags to Go Livepeer to facilitate the recording? Like, does it use parts of that Go Livepeer recording today, or is it totally non-dependent on Go Livepeer for recording?
Yeah, to answer that, I don't think it uses anything in what you're probably looking at in the Go Livepeer recording pipeline. It does use underlying that is there's a repo, I think it's called Go Tools, which contains all of the different object store clients that we have in so it's like S3, and then there's like a local file one, and I think we've implemented one or two others over the years, but the one that sees the most use is S3. So there is code shared there because Livepeer Catalyst Uploader does make use of the same underlying S3 library that we wrote, and supports the same. If you've been working with this, you've probably seen like the S3 plus HTTPS format for representing object stores. And so it uses that same, the syntax in that sense will be very familiar to you, but none of the Go Livepeer code is used.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. I actually did make one change to Go Tools as part of this work, and that was just to make it so that the two things. So on a S3 CDN combo, usually there's an access control. We were looking to make all the files publicly available on a cache. That way they can be played directly off a decentralized storage from the end user. And then the second part was just like the cache control headers, which are supported by S3 that the CDN usually supports too. And that way you could say, well, the M3U8 is no caching. It's always going to be fresh every time the request comes through. And then for like TS segments, those would get cached on the CDN. There might be some improvement, those two changes there might help Catalyst or someone using it to put together their own solution without any kind of proxy between, if that makes sense, on the CDN side. But thank you. That provides a lot of context as far as where the dependencies are, so we can think of this as either completely separate, as a gateway for people who are interested in Go Livepeer with until at least until Catalyst gets to be perhaps more user friendly. Or if people are just interested in Livepeer, they can get started with a single broadcaster solution and watch the whole thing work and get that developed. One of the other things that I was thinking about with this work is long-term migrating that into the orchestrator side. If the orchestrator could do kind of like you were talking earlier, Mist server is shifting broadcasters. If we could shift orchestrators and keep recording and the orchestrator push everything to S3, that would provide for a real authentic decentralized architecture. And I believe this code could be reused in that, just kind of, moved more to the orchestrator side. Any thoughts on that idea? I know like Catalyst itself isn't intended to be, decentralized sort of. I may be wrong about that. I think of it as your media server. But if
open
we could
source media server, right?
It's like the centerpiece for the stack, right? Where ingest goes through, it's routing the traffic, it's handling the interactions with the broadcaster. When the data comes back, it's retrieving it back, and you know what I mean? Like it's the keystone of the stack. So whereas, we're thinking along the lines of, not having this keystone where it's all of these pieces are just, autonomous really, and they're just self-sufficient.
Yeah, the dream would be, I've mentioned this previously, like having a JavaScript based broadcaster, that could be on a serverless type of thing. Just kind of breaking away from Go Livepeer and Catalyst completely and just having that broadcaster be able to do that. We could probably build that today, but when it comes to hosting the segments, the broadcaster would need to send that, or rather, it would be nice if the orchestrator could send that to S3, and then we've already proven that you can watch the video there, you can play it back there. That would move you closer to being able to build something like that. And again, I think this code could be used for that. And you don't really need the recordings handler since it's all just going straight to S3. It's one use case particularly, and it's a long roadmap, but it's just, I think, a big idea that could have value.
Yeah, and I think the other part to it is that stuff is that we're at a phase right now where both, so the end state of the media platform's not ready yet, meaning there's still some iterations that we're going to have to do on the platform, if it's Catalyst or Go Livepeer, where there's going to be changes made to continue to get to the end game, right? The end vision. So like there's several iterations. And again, is this an iteration that might be sufficient to have it in the broadcaster of Go Livepeer? Or is there, a way to say, if it's in Catalyst Mist, how can we leverage the same capability in the single broadcaster model or a multi-broadcaster model? Or is it literally just don't even bother with it in Go Livepeer? Let's just put it right in, or as it is in Catalyst today. So again, I think it's really not right and wrong, as Eli pointed out. It's, where's the value, and are there use cases? Is there going to be demand where that stuff actually plays in?
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
If I can just jump in real quick, I've kind of hopped in late, so sorry if this is completely off topic, but from the standpoint, I heard somebody mention like whether or not Catalyst is decentralized or not, and like I have some reservations about like just thinking about Livepeer as a whole and building a decentralized media platform. I think that Livepeer's done a great job at decentralizing the orchestrator side of things and the transcoding side of things, and that's great. But I do think that it's only half, or maybe even less than half, of the actual battle here. And I think like putting efforts towards decentralizing broadcasting is at this point essential for the decentralization of the network.
Yeah, it's kind of plays together, Troy. It's we're really talking about a grant where we were trying to do storage from the broadcaster directly to S3, and that's where this grant was. But it touches on some of those topics as well, where, like I was saying, is if there was some more clarity around the roadmap for Catalyst and Go Livepeer, perhaps folks like John and myself could be building towards the end state of those products versus us trying to solve our own, internal problems. Like I know, Xenon's got their stuff they're doing. We got stuff we're building. Like, everyone's doing their own thing. But if there was a unified goal in which key components, like you're mentioning, should be decentralized, and I think John alluded to it with the browser-based broadcaster, right? He wants to be able to just go right live from his browser doing streams and paying for them that way. So like I think if there was some clarity on the convergence of these products and the future shape of what it might look like, I think then a lot of this stuff kind of goes away. But is it decentralized? So your point is decentralization of Catalyst and Mist, the broadcaster, part of the roadmap? If that's true, then I think we have some work to do. But if it's not, then go ahead.
I think that it very well can be decentralized, right? Like we use it at Xenon, but the lift at actually getting it set up was pretty tremendous, especially 8-9 months ago when we were actually starting to get that set up, or maybe even longer. It definitely hasn't been an easy path to go down from an external platform building with Catalyst. But I think that like if you look at the conversations Marco and I've been having in the all really a couple of the other names in here in the broadcaster channel of this Discord, like I think that those are the types of conversations that are really necessary. Is like building Catalyst in a way that obviously there's like Eli has tons of work all the time on like improving and bug fixing for Catalyst, but like building an incentive for video builders to not only run their own broadcasters but also run their own orchestrators, and having the tools in Catalyst to be able to easily flag an orchestrator priority list to kind of like just have an optional like, oh, I wanna make sure I prioritize these orcs first, whatever stuff like that. Like that's what's gonna incentivize video platforms like Xenon to actually use Livepeer, is to have the flexibility of like, all right, I wanna point all of my streams here, and then if this orchestrator can't handle any more streams, then pour into the live, like the greater Livepeer pool of transcoders itself. But so like if you
Yeah,
go on
that's
that,
job distribution you're talking about, being able to distribute the work out to,
yeah,
specific
in a custom way,
entities.
like the way you want to, rather than being confined to like the delegated LPT stake. I just think that I've actually been really enjoying the conversations that I've been having with Marco and all you guys in the broadcasting channel. So like, it's definitely been hell. Like there was like one night a couple weekends ago where it was like 10:30 p.m. 11. I was out at dinner with my girlfriend, and like things were just going downhill quick. Like our broadcaster was just like trying to send the same broken segments in a loop over and over again to Ben or Papa Bear, I think. That
was interesting.
that was fun. That was interesting, but it kind of sucked. But like honestly, I think we got some great insight, and I think like with Xenon at least like helping, or with Xenon using Catalyst in our own implementation, like yeah, I think it's definitely helping the Livepeer team out a bunch.
Can confirm, absolutely. It's been great having us not be the only real sort of production operators of this thing. And yeah, jumping always, I really do appreciate the effort. And
Hey, I appreciate you saying that, because I always feel like we're being super annoying. Like, I'm like, yo, what is happening? Like, this thing is just, it's like, it's not supposed to spin out of control, but it seems like it is.
yeah, still not 100% sure what that was, the cause was there. But if I can just speak to, I want to absolutely echo, getting back to part of the reason people are interested in hacking on Go Livepeer is because it is, on the broadcaster side, is because it is so approachable. You clone one Git repository, you run make, and you get and there's your node. You have it right there. You want to make an adjustment, you run make again. It's very one code base, very sort of low barrier to entry there. And as the folks at Xenon have found out, the barrier to entry with Catalyst, especially operating in a production setting, has been pretty high historically. I think this is incredibly important for us to improve on as the core team and as the maintainers of Catalyst. It is still, for even folks like Raffle, who have contributed on every level of the Livepeer stack, front end, back end, the crypto, smart contract stuff, it's still way too hard to get all of those things together. So I've been working a lot on this, actually. I actually spent most of the weekend on trying to basically automate the steps to getting a Catalyst node with all the bells and whistles put together. I have a little demo I can do. I don't want to derail the conversation, so I can save that for later too. But I would love to show off what I've been working on so far.
Right, I'd like to open up the floor now to any questions towards the people proposing the grant, which is John, Mike, and Ben. Does anyone else have any questions to these individuals about the grant proposal itself, technical questions, or anything in that line?
I've really enjoyed the discussion. I think this gives a lot of context to where the dependencies are between Catalyst and the legacy recording feature, I guess you may say, and where the value add would be here. I think it sounds like what we have today is a sort of a broken playback of recordings within Go Livepeer. And so the discussion was around maybe either we could easily deprecate that as part of this grant, but also the functionality that we're talking about, where we go straight to S3, kind of replaces that recordings handler for playback. I don't really have a lot of other questions. I'm trying to think of, does the essentially does the core team feel like if we make this change to Go Livepeer, will it help increase adoption, developer adoption, either in the short term or the long term. I feel
And is
like
it a pathway? Is it a pathway for folks that start out as a single node and then want to ratchet it up with a different, let's say, a single node is all you need, and that's good, and it's basic. It's it's a quick starter, right? It's the short term thing, but it's a good on ramp for folks that aren't super technical. They're not really looking for the entropy battle where there's so many pieces to put together. But I think Eli is going to make that part easier, and we can definitely validate that. But I guess the real question I have is, is there a pathway in which this module could be built in a way that leverages that Go utils and then can coexist, where they both exist and they leverage a shared module of some sort, in which if it changes here, it fixes Go Livepeer's version as well as Catalyst? Can they coexist and as a module and then be reused? Or is it something that we just stop the train right now? Let's not waste any more effort in the broadcaster, and literally, Catalyst is the go forward, and the Go Livepeer broadcaster pretty much is going to sunset and go away at some point. Because if that's the true plan, the true roadmap, then I think we probably shouldn't implement the Go Livepeer. But I'll let Eli and folks, maybe respond to that.
I wouldn't say get rid of the broadcaster entirely. What I would say is, look, Go Livepeer. There's sort of two paths forward here, where you want to for Go Livepeer, you can either have it be this one component. So the broadcaster is exclusively, it takes video segments and gets them transcoded on the public network, returns that. And then you have sort of these, call them media server features. And this is what we've been talking about deprecating. I can't speak for the whole core team. I also am not the lead maintainer of Go Livepeer at any point. So I wouldn't be the one to sort of drive this forward or make this call. But I know what we've been discussing is, look, right now, the Go Livepeer has this RTMP ingest and HLS playback capability. A production video streaming workload needs not just those two things, but dozens of input protocols and dozens of output protocols. And so we could look toward making this sort of full stack, full featured Go media server application. But that's the kind of thing that Mist Server has been doing for 10 years. And if we want to look at a tighter integration there, rather than trying to sort of reinvent everything in Go, that's the direction things have been heading in. And then it would also allow us to sort of remove a lot from the Go Livepeer code base, really reduce the maintenance burden on that side of things, and just sort of exclusively have it be this sort of segment transcoder. But like I was saying, that kind of, while I think there's virtue in that, we would absolutely want to couple that kind of thing with, we don't want to raise the barrier to entry for people to start playing around with Livepeer tech. We want to continue to have it be as easy as it is right now to get started. And we're definitely not hitting that with Catalyst right now, with basically only 2 real production users of Catalyst in Studio and Xenon.
Big shout out to Xenon. We're actually streaming through them right now. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Head over.
I
Go ahead,
have
Chance.
one more question. So I recently talked to Marco and realized that actually we can, I think we knew this for a while, but we can run multiple transport protocols using Catalyst. And I just have a question to the orchestrators in here, how I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question, but the other transport protocols do not involve transcoding, or some of them. Maybe most of them. Eli, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But WebRTC, the lower latency transport protocols don't involve any sort of transcoding. And so I think we haven't played with this much, so maybe this is already done. But having HLS as an easy fallback is super important, especially if you want to do certain things with the segments and whatnot. But I'm just curious how is that like a big deal for you guys as orchestrators, or
If I can maybe, I think I see what you're getting at there, but I think that you're conflating two slightly different points there. So there's
yeah, please. I
so
don't know.
there's transcoding, which is like, sending in, I do my own streams at 4K 60, but serve them out to people at 1080p, 720p. We're all familiar with that. What I think you're describing is we would call like ABR, right? Adaptive bit rate, where it's like HLS playback has this automatic mechanism where it serves out all of the different renditions, and the user client can then, if they've got a bad connection, they'll get a low one or a high one. And some of the MIST low latency protocols, you can certainly, you can get WebRTC, you can get some of these other options to output transcoded renditions, but they wouldn't have automatic selection of transcoded renditions, right? It would be like you would have to specifically request the 720p version or something like that.
Oh, so you can still have different tracks with WebRTC.
Totally.
Oh,
Again,
okay,
on the
nice.
technical side, you could, it just comes down to using a MIST track selector. So if you do basically a query string with video equals 720p, then you get the 720p output.
And then from the front end, you might be able to detect bandwidth and automate it there rather than directly from the M3 rate link.
Yeah,
the initiator of the WebRTC, the client side, would be able to determine what their capabilities are, and then that would be how you would tell MIST to give you what you want back.
Got it. Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know, because we were actually like looking into the lower latency transport protocols, and I was a little concerned with not having those other resolutions to fall back on in case a user has bad internet or something. But that's good to know that we could still get it. I was super under the impression that you couldn't.
Yeah, it's just a question of how automatic the process is, essentially.
And then just to close the conversation on the grant, is there maybe this was stated already and I missed it, but is there a clear path forward? Like, should Elite continue working on his side of things, or should we stop?
I do have one more question to add.
Oh yeah, go for it, man.
Before we
Please.
reach a verdict or something. Given that we've developed this within Go Livepeer just on the broadcaster side, but it's in the same application as the orchestrator, would there be significant value? I think there would be value, but I wanted to see your opinion and roadmap around Catalyst. When we talk about decentralized recording, if we could record from the orchestrator side, at the request of a broadcaster coming from Catalyst, I suppose, if the orchestrator is doing this recording and pushing to S3, would that be something that we're interested in approaching? Because I do think we could reuse what we've developed. And we just have to address some of the, those edge cases you were talking about if you shift from node to node, which may have already been addressed in the prior development, which is some testing. But does that make sense? Like if an orchestrator could do the recording and pushing to S3, you would have a full stack of decentralized hosting, recording, transcoding. Pretty much everything except the ingest would be within the network.
I would say there has existed something like that before. Actually, the original, when I got to Livepeer in 2019, there was object store functionality, and that was using a S3 compatible storage as an intermediary, where rather than sending segments from a broadcaster and orchestrator directly, they would send URLs essentially, and the orchestrator would upload them to S3, and then the broadcaster could get them there, basically to avoid bandwidth constraints and that kinds of thing. The biggest barrier, it's potentially interesting. I'm not going to necessarily, again, I'm not a core. I'm do a lot more on the Catalyst side than the Go Livepeer side. I'll let those folks speak for themselves, and I'm not on the grant committee. The biggest barrier, just from what you've described off the top of my head, would be that as many of you are aware, where the algorithm right now is pretty aggressive about orchestrator swaps, pretty much at the first even potential sign of trouble. a broadcaster might switch O's. So then you're just right back into the situation as before, where sure, all of these orchestrators can push segments to the same place, but who is it that's responsible for then getting the playlist and getting something suitable for playback? There's answers to that too. That's just the tricky part that comes up to my mind right away.
Yeah, that's good. And is there any plan for like catalysts to solve that type of a thing? I don't want to call it a problem, but from getting to a fully decentralized recording stack would be really cool.
Yeah, I would say I don't know of anything when we're
I guess it's got to go on the orchestrator side either way if you're going to be decentralized about it.
So Titan, these are the use cases that are perfect for the builder DAO, whatever the name ultimately becomes. And it's one of those things where I think Doug, put out an RFP for some grants that he thought might be interesting for the community to work on. I think these are the same scenarios where I think on a call like this, it's good. We can toss some ideas around and I think it'll be productive. But I feel like if there's actual use cases that warrant this kind of stack that customers are looking to use as part of their ideals of building like a Xenon on the in a decentralized fashion, an RFP, and then allowing folks to truly kick the tires and look at the ideas and the proposals. I think as you guys are discussing a lot of the technical stuff, those are the kinds of things where that RFP might be perfect, where the video DAO can say, these are the community's asking for these things, right? We want this. Whereas we're not sure right now. We're just talking, in general. Just to.
I'm sorry to cut you off there, Eli.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, actually, the Video Builder DAO is one of my topics, so we can jump into that quite shortly here. Based on that, where are we at with So I see that I'm just looking at the phases real quick of this grant, and we've been talking for about a while, and we've got really, really deep, which I'm very, very happy of. But I can see that phase 1 is predated, phase 2 is predated for June as well, and I think you're on phase 3 now, which is around documentation and things. How close are you to closing up this first 3 phases, and then what are the next steps going forward, do you think?
Yeah, I think from a development perspective, we've completed through phase 2, and all of that's working. I would assume some unit tests need to be developed, to prove it out. We've actually ran our own manual testing, and it's worked well. That takes us into phase 3 to write unit tests. Phase 2 includes those. So we have a functioning prototype in phase 2 is what I would say. And then phase 3 would get to the documentation side, where I was wanting to address making sure that when people are looking at like the CLI flags, they know what to do with them around recording, like object store, record store, and then particularly this use case around S3, how to implement it with Go Livepeer and use it to stream to a decentralized CDN and or storage. So yeah, we're kind of halfway through phase 2 with the working prototype and moving towards phase 3, and just kind of looking for the blessing to move forward with it. And I think the time and the hours, the costs here. I mean, I would normally just write code for the fun of it. I just want to see value added to Livepeer. So we're pretty much on track from that perspective, but we could easily pare down the scope a little bit if it makes sense to refine it a little.
Well, I think the big hang up was, I mean, this stuff could have been probably finished by now. I think we were on hold really thinking, does this align with the vision for Catalyst and the vision for Go Livepeer? And we weren't sure. I think that's why we brought it to this conversation today, is the vision of the Catalyst and the broadcaster for Go Livepeer, does this fit into that vision? Because if it does, then we can just, we're at the edge of wrapping it up. There's work here, but we could go full steam and wrap it up quickly. and be done with it. I think it just does it align with the vision, and if it doesn't, then we don't even want to push it forward. If there's no value or it's being replaced in Catalyst, and this just becomes tech debt that has to be pulled out or go live here at some point, then there's no sense in going forward. So it's really, we're at the crossroads. Which path do we take? Do we shut it down, or do we just finish building it and add it in, and keep building towards that vision?
Definitely.
Yeah, there was discussion around like supporting it. Who will support this, and yeah, I see it as an open source contribution, and there's been some other things that we've done in that way that were just PRs that we opened up. It wasn't really a grant. So I mean, I see the community could probably support. I don't think this would need much support over time, but I do think this goes along with some use cases that maybe Catalyst in its current form doesn't address. And really, just this addresses a current problem within Go Livepeer, and so I mean, if the grant becomes simply just removing the current recording feature, it kind of makes sense, but currently, if Catalyst isn't using Go Livepeer for recording, and the recording playback seems to be broke, this solves that problem. It may just be a short-lived thing, but yeah, that's where we're at, and I appreciate everyone's discussion time on this. It's really, really interesting.
Very good.
And I look forward to working more with Catalyst as well.
I'd also like to just prompt some feedback from the Xenon team on this type of kind of implementation or feedback. So Transmental, if you want to share this with the guys at Xenon, the link is in the chat for this proposal, or for the grant itself. Yeah, just want to solicit some feedback from the other major broadcaster on the network. That'd be good.
Yeah, definitely will.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Okay, cool. That was like the first topic of today. So I'm happy with how that went. That was very, very robust and informative. So there are a couple other topics we're going to go through for the remaining hour. These ones include, I'll name them off here, and then we'll kind of just go in order. So if any of these interest you, please stick around. And then also we'll quickly do introductions. I think we have a couple new people. But we have the Retroactive Grant DAO, so that's something as my topic. ThomasBlock, we're going to get around to how to become a strong orchestrator. A Papa Bear about the default selection algorithm and the updates to that. And as well as Robko, his draft node operator survey. So, yeah, I'm going to move on. And then quickly, I think we have a couple people that have joined us. Transmental, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and any topics you'd like to add?
I'm Zach. I'm the CPO at Xenon, and I don't have a topic really. I'm just working, listening, but I'm here if there's any questions directed at me, and I have my opinions are kind of loud, so I might jump in.
No worries.
But yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Varies, would you like to introduce yourself and any topics?
Hey all, I'm running the Weirds and Mares at Eve orchestrator. No topics from my side.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, Mike, quickly introduce yourself and a topic you might have.
Hey guys, Mike Zuper. I run the Zodap orchestrator. No topics. I was here, supporting the storage grant discussion, and as Zach said, I'm loud too, so I'll get in there whenever I have an opinion to assert.
Definitely. Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us, Mike. Let's head on to Rob's topic. Rob is doing a survey for I guess the 1KX organization. He did a Q&A session just a few weeks ago, and he's following up with some orchestrator questions. So, Rob, do you want to tell us a little bit about the survey, the purpose of the survey, and yeah, tell us what you're working on.
Yes, thanks for the context already. So yeah, we as part of, as I said initially, I'm a researcher at 1KX, and the current focus area is kind of like tokenomics, token design of Web3 infrastructure networks. And a typical question you ask yourself when you design tokens, you want to understand like who are the stakeholders and supporters of the network, and why, what is their motivation. And for infrastructure networks, the most important is obviously the supply side. So that's you guys. And we started. I linked it also in the survey draft as well. And we had the Q&A session. We started with the reward side, and then obviously, the next step for us is like, okay, what's the supply, right? How many instances are there? How many node operators? Concentration, but then also like the cost side, right? Because knowing this, you can, it's kind of like a base for incentive design. And since Livepeer is already out, it's more like looking at the current status and how things are currently working. And the cost side, right, even not just, hardware side, because that's interesting, the setup, but then also like things like, how many hours do operators spend on for maintenance and operations. And yeah, this is obviously interesting for the research. I can share more about why, right, to aggregate these learnings on the network level. But then obviously, since such survey also means some effort and time on your side to answer these questions, obviously we would also see like, okay, what should we include to help facilitate some of these discussions that you just had, like okay, eventually when we go down to decentralization, what should we incentivize and so on and so forth. So yeah, long story short, since I'm also like have the outside view, right? I don't run an orchestrator. I just read about it and listen into these discussions and the discussions on Discord. I would really be keen to like, what's the feedback you have, especially how I can shorten this survey. If things are unclear, if there are even some things where you feel like have concerns about, answering such questions. But yeah, anything of this. That's why I'm here. If you have questions to it, also like following up, you can reach out to me at any time, anyways, and also just comment in the questionnaire. So yeah, with that, if you have questions already, feel free to ask. Otherwise, happy to follow up also after the chat.
Wonderful. I'm just looking at it now. I really like the detail of the questions and where it's going. A question for you is, obviously this is just a draft. Where will you be hosting this type of survey? Is it going to be, where will you be hosting it? And when will it be live, you think?
So the idea is to just post it as a forum post and, put it in a kind of like Google Forms format, so you can more click through it and don't need to, go into this Google Doc. And yeah, then have it as a form post so people can kind of like link there and fill it out.
Great. So you'll be kind of formatting, like, so once you give some feedback on the type of questions, like I already brought up one, which was about orchestrator selection. It says, how many orchestrators do you currently run? But that can actually mean two different things, which I already brought to your attention. Something like, are you asking how many addresses we're running? Like I run 2, which is Titan Node and Livepeer Academy. Or is this, how many of the same nodes are you running under that single orchestrator address, right? So clarification on kind of that. So I see people already in here typing and giving some feedback. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to give some feedback, just to clarify the questions and provide some context. But so far, I think it's a really, really good starting point.
Yeah.
Are you going to be publishing these type of metrics, or what is the purpose of getting these details?
So yes, maybe also because I just see somebody writing things in there, and who anonymous straw, if you
Yeah. So,
I don't want your answers to be publicly available for all the other guys. So this is not the survey, right? This is just a draft, so you can give feedback on the questions.
Yeah, this is also another thing. You're best to not have this editable for everybody.
Yeah, I thought actually it's just commentable, but sorry.
Yeah, because like I can start adding stuff too. I think just start doing whatever. What you need to do is maybe seek feedback from individual orchestrators that could just probably groom through this, like just like it would only take a few one orchestrator to go through and reword some of these so that they make sense to us, and then I would then just formalize it directly into a Google post where all the submissions would be anonymous. That would be my recommendation.
Yes, exactly. And then that's the plan, right? Like to have it in a Google form, collect the feedback. Then like for our research, we would aggregate it on a network level, to understand like, okay, how much instances are there, also on the regional split. I mean, right, for full transparency, we are doing this for with other networks as well. Just as one example, like Pocket, for example, right now we have a survey live. I can post a link where it's more detailed because we do it together with the foundation. If you for example, another example is Akash, which actually already has like a website where they kind of like show this information on a level. I can maybe just share the link here, so you should get a feeling of like what sort of like output we're looking into to get, because based on this input we can share the network aggregate. But then also again, like as kind of like a thank you note for you guys answering all these questions. If you're interested, we can obviously kind of like share, how do you benchmark, to the aggregate, for example. And in any ways, I envision, right, once we post like the aggregate findings, you guys and the community can say like, oh, can you also take a look at that or that, right? And then I can basically say, okay, yeah, I can extract this information without, making any of the answers like detectable or something like that. But yeah, that's the idea, to basically start high level as a summary and then go from there.
Definitely. Cool. Okay, yeah, we'll go hop in here. I'm sure a lot of people are just going to start editing this form because they can. So I see that person though, the anonymous Stru did delete their answers out of here. So I'm going in here and trying to reword the questions so that they make sense. Anyway, it's really good.
Thanks.
I'm
Yeah,
really excited to
highly appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this go live, and then even compare it against other networks. I think would be really cool. Any questions from the community about this survey? No one's got any questions? I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, I like the questions, and just want to say I appreciate you doing this, Rob, and setting this up. I'm looking forward to filling out the survey.
Cool.
Should we make copies of this, or is it, let's see, everyone's filling it out. I mean, there'd be a separate copy for each orchestrator.
Rob's going to redo this into a form, proper like Google form, and then you can just fill in your answers there. This is
excellent. Sorry.
I think he's just getting feedback on what questions to ask.
And do those questions make sense? Are the nomenclature good? Are the words correct and accurate? Yeah. So if he's missing questions, he'd like you to ask more, or if there are questions that are not important, that he wants you to take them out. But try to make the survey as best as it can be by editing it right now.
And then add on to it.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
That's right. Yeah. But for the most part, he's got a really good baseline here of like for not being an orchestrator, like which regions do you serve? How do you decide which region to serve? Like these are like legitimate questions. These are very good. But there's going to be some things in here that, unless you are deep technical knowledge of an orchestrator, you might just like not quite understand. So we'll go through this, and if you see any way to, like, I've done the one here under orchestrator selection. It says, I said, how many orchestrator nodes do you currently run per single orc address? Right? I think that makes sense, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because
watching you type that.
Yeah, because otherwise the question was, how many orchestrators do you run? And it's like, well, that could mean a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go. Cool. We'll give some feedback and mess up this form nice and good, and then you can try to stick it back together into a form. That's perfect.
Yeah, highly appreciate the mess up. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Okay, let's continue on. I'm going to quickly do my topic, which is the Retroactive Grant DAO, and then we're going to head over to ThomasBlock's question, and then we'll finish off with Papa Bears. So I want to direct your attention to a post, a link I just put in chat. I'll put it again, which is the application for the Tier 2 Livepeer Retroactive Grant Funding DAO, and also the contest for naming the DAO. So if you haven't done so already, please head over to jokerace.xyz. I post a link here and submit a name for the DAO itself. You get $50 in Livepeer if you win, and you get unlimited submissions. So if you want $50 in LPT, you can literally sit here for 20 minutes and fill in tons and tons of different DAO names. And if you get selected, you are the winner. So, go submit some names, and we'll see how they go. But in the meantime, I figured before, I get eager sometimes. I don't want to wait to actually create the application before we get the name. I like to put the cart in front of the horse sometimes. So I went ahead and actually created the application for the DAO itself. So this is for the Tier 2 Retroactive Grant Funding DAO. And it's a long application. It's not very simple. I would also like some feedback on it, but basically what I did was created 2 roles within the DAO. You have an administrator role and a video builder expert role. And the idea behind this was that, we want video builder experts to be the ones voting on who gets the funding, but we also need to actually run the DAO, which takes time, effort, and is not actually just runs itself. You need people to run it. And so there's this administrator kind of role, and this would be something like myself. I will be applying as an administrator for this DAO, which would mean I'm responsible for community support, development, doing exactly what we're doing right now, which is me promoting it and trying to get it out there. And, I'm not necessarily a video expert, but I'm going to be help running the DAO. So I also get 5 votes. And the application is pretty long. I mean, it talks about your previous experience, what makes you want to be involved, your motivations. And the idea is if you have the time and effort to fill this in, then maybe you're legitimately want to be a part of this DAO. Whereas, if it was as simple as just liking a tweet on Twitter, you might get lots of members, but that's not what we're going for here. We're going to be distributing potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of LPT in the coming years. So this is an important role, in my opinion. So if you are inclined or interested in joining this DAO, please fill in the application. There is also potential for being what does it say? Rewarded for being in the DAO. So, compensated. That's the right word. So there's actually a time tracker I've created, and as you do work in the DAO, you can write down your hours. And for every round that happens, which is going to be, say, every 6 months or a quarter, a portion, like say 5 or 10%, go to people who run the DAO, and we can vote on who's done the most work or contributed the most or deserving of the funds. So this can be potentially somewhat of a paid role if you're interested, or if you're just a video expert. Maybe the DAO votes that, hey, video experts also get a piece of this pie because, hey, they're coming in with their expertise. So it's not just a monkey DAO where you are just speculating on monkeys. This is going to be potentially compensated for good work and knowledge in the ecosystem. So please fill it in. Much appreciated. Does anyone have any questions so far on that?
There's actually a question that just popped into the chat. They ask, what sort of work is associated with running a DAO? Can you give some brief examples?
Sure. Okay. So in the application, I just did some basic ones. So these are some tasks the administrator would be involved. So obviously video builder experts don't have to do anything in the DAO. Once a month, they can come in, read the proposals, vote, and leave. Okay, so video builder experts, we just want them for their knowledge. So therefore, if they don't have a lot of time to invest, that is totally fine. The administrator role is in, marketing, accounting, community support, recruitment, development, proposals, just anything to keep, the DAO running smoothly. So one example would be the DAO needs a website. Okay, well, who's going to build the website? I mean, how complicated do we want this website? How much time is this person going to build doing this website? Okay, so we have maybe an administrator that builds a WordPress site, makes it look pretty, does the visuals for it, and okay, we have a place to go. All right, now we want to run a round. Okay, well, we need to market this round. We need to get people that have either built previously on Livepeer or want to build on Livepeer. And we want to publish a Medium post, an article explaining what is going on. So, someone's got to market this round. We might need some sort of developer to research platforms on how we're going to run this contest. We need someone to write a proposal to the Tier 1 treasury asking for the funds and get approved on the Tier 1 treasury. So there's a proposal to the Tier 1 to get funded for our contest. These all take time and effort and blah, blah, blah. So that deserves compensation. And it would be similar to running, in my opinion, some sort of like good service social club in your area, right? So some sort of executive role where you invest something like 5 hours or 10 hours a week into building this out, right? So this is not like a part-time job. This is not a large time commitment, but it's a commitment nonetheless, right? So hopefully that answers your question. And I'm also feedback to criticism on this idea. I wanted to make it simple. I've seen other DAOs where they've created like a long list of like independent roles. So like you have a marketing VP and you've got, a community VP and you've got the technical VP. And I figured I didn't want to get that specific. I'd rather just have it as this like one administrator role, and then from there we all just figure out our strengths and weaknesses to do that. This is a role limited in strength or limited in size too. Like we don't want a video builder DAO to have 20 administrators and 5 video builder experts. Like we'd probably want it the inverse. So hopefully we'd have something like 10 to 15 video builder experts and maybe like 3 to 5 like administrators, or whatever we see fit, right? I don't know to what degree, and you can kind of, I haven't played around with the idea yet of like holding both roles. Like maybe you're a video builder expert and you want to do administrative work, so you can, but you're not obligated to. So anyway, these are just thoughts going around my head. Does anyone else have any feedback or criticism based on what's bouncing around in my head?
To be a video builder expert, do you need to be a coder or just have knowledge about how this stuff works? Just a working knowledge.
I think it's just knowledge. Like, because you don't necessarily have to be a programmer, but like, it probably helps to know like macro trends of video. Like if you see a widget, if someone builds a widget that can onboard 1 million users, well, and you're an expert in that field, like you don't need to be a programmer to go, no, this is where we need to go, right? Like, so I don't think to be the expert you have to be a programmer. You just have to understand like demand, or like what would push demand to the network, right?
Got it.
maybe I should make that clear, because what do I say? Primarily for their expertise in the field. Yeah, field for evaluating applicants during the funding rounds. Yeah, like, and maybe you don't. Maybe it's not even video related. Maybe it's like social related. Maybe you're the, the founder of Lens Protocol, and maybe you're not a video guy,
Yeah,
but you're a social guy.
because it doesn't, it doesn't say anything about needing to know coding. And when I actually filled it out, and I was thinking, just my initial thought was that you did need to know coding, and I'm thinking that maybe I filled out for the wrong role.
Well, I mean, you only get you get 5. It depends also your involvement. Do you want to be an administrator and help, or do you want to just sit back, relax, and this is good feedback. What constitutes a video expert, right? Yeah, it's very subjective right now. And as for you, Papa Bear, like I don't know. You filled in the administrator role, but I mean,
I did, and I'm wondering now if I think if a video expert doesn't need to know actually how to code, but is just familiar with concepts and gets the general idea of how things get put together, I think that would probably be a better fit for me. I mean, I could talk to you about this offline, but
yeah, definitely. Like based on your background, I would say you're a video expert. Like, it's just from what I know of you as a person. Like,
yeah, and listening to your description of what an administrator is, I think that's probably not the right. We could take this offline, but yeah, I think I probably filled out for the wrong role. Whether I make it into the DAO or not, that's another issue. But
yeah, well,
yeah, but yeah, I was thinking that you needed to be a coder. Just and again, it's not the way it's written. It was just in my own head from just that was just the way I took it. But that was probably just because it was getting kind of late when I was doing it. But
no. Maybe I should put out some criteria as to like what is a video builder or video builder expert. Like,
right. I guess that's the thing is I was thinking you actually had to be a builder and actually building on building for Livepeer to be in that role. But I guess that it makes sense now thinking about it and talking to you about it, that it just kind of understanding what type of video projects would make sense for Livepeer is a good fit.
I will just add that in there. Qualities of a video builder expert be like, just like, yeah. I'll kind of summarize what I just said, but yeah, it's not necessarily a programmer, because I also don't, just because you're a programmer doesn't mean you have a good judgment on what would create demand for the network, right?
Right.
Those are two very different, one is a really great technical implementation of some code, but like clearly won't drive any demand, and one is like, a marketing campaign and drives tons of demand. It's like, well, what's more valuable? What deserves the grant, right? And what we're trying to do is build the grant based on quantitative data of demand usage. So, what has your widget contributed to demand side? And so, yeah, I don't think, coding is definitely not the piece to the puzzle. But it
makes sense, and probably, yeah, and like you said, probably good just to add that in there just for someone who's not here listening right now.
Cool. All right. Yeah, there you go. That's where we're at with the DAO naming contest. Please submit a response, and also please apply for the DAO as we're just getting started. And please share.
Captain, can I?
Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask something? How technical does the administrator role need to be, or is it mainly social sort of adaptiveness that you need to be for that, or is it how much technical Livepeer knowledge would you need?
I don't think you need any technical Livepeer knowledge. In fact, I feel like an administrator role would benefit more from like DAO knowledge. Like if you've previously run a DAO before, that would actually be the most qualified person for the administrator role, because, well, what is a DAO? How does it operate? These type of questions. And they seem to be kind of ever changing because the landscape changes quite often. I don't think DAO today is the same thing a DAO was 4 years ago. So, yeah, an administrator role doesn't need to necessarily be technical. Like, it can just be organizational.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
And also the skill set they bring, like if you're a content creator and you can promote the rounds, then that would be a piece of the administrator role, right?
Yes, exactly. Thanks.
Very good. Rob says, happy to introduce some folks that ran/build DAOs. Exactly. If you could either put them in touch with me or maybe send them to the application or anything like that would be really, really helpful. Even just to learn more on requirements such as a role. Yeah, exactly. There we go.
That's awesome. I'm excited for this. It's actually coming together.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't even sure if I was supposed to separate like video builder expert versus administrator, but I didn't want some video builder experts to not join because they didn't want the hassle of it. So I wanted them to just know that they, just based on their knowledge, they kind of get a free ride, because every 6 months they can just log on and vote, right? But obviously to get people to apply in itself is like a huge under task. Like it's a lot of work. So yeah. Cool. Yeah, that covers that topic. Let's move on to Thomas. ThomasBlock. Are you here?
Mm-hmm.
Your topic was how to become a strong, successful orchestrator. Can you explain your topic a little bit and questions you might have?
Yes. So the one side is growing the hardware. So I think I'm a good way there, monitoring everything and maybe adding more GPUs. But the other thing is to attract delegators. So I'm still a quite small orchestrator. So do you have any tips for me on how to attract delegators? So maybe what did you do in the past, and what's at present times a good method? So did you do some special kind of promotions or even buy ads, or or another way is just to deliver good service and wait and see. But can you somehow accelerate that? That would be my questions.
I guess I can jump in. What really helped me was being super, super active in Discord and just not missing a water cooler chat and trying to get in on any conversation that was happening. I don't do that as much anymore, but that really helped me in the beginning gain a bit of traction. I think what also helped for me personally was advertising a dynamic reward cut of sorts. So like there are milestones, and every time you hit a certain amount of LPT staked, you reduce the rewards a little bit. I think that can set you apart. In terms of buying ads and stuff, I think Pawn, who's in the audience, tried that once. I'm not sure if it really worked out. Not to say that a strong marketing initiative around your node wouldn't gain traction, but I haven't seen it personally. I got a bit lucky. I got an email from someone who wanted to delegate, and I think that having all my information on my orchestrator page, website, a way for people to contact me if they want, helped with that a lot, and just being active. So those are the key points that I can think of right now. It is hard. It's hard to attract stake, but I think just trying to stay active and making sure all the information, website, everything is easy to find and you're easy to reach personally.
Thank you.
Yeah, as Ben mentioned, probably buying advertisement is not the best way to go. I tried it and it didn't didn't brought any even questions from delegators. You could see the traffic coming in, but nothing materialized from that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll also back up Ben's suggestion to be as active in the Discord as possible, helping out new members that are trying to get set up and things like that. Again, I don't do it as much as I did when I first started. I mean, I was basically like, I felt like I was like technical support. I mean, anything that I had gone through, and especially when you're new doing it, it's all really fresh in your head. If you just set something up, just helping out new people, and just being able to get your seeing your name pop up a lot just helps people notice you, and then keeping your information in your forum post about your node current, and keeping people up to date on how you're doing, and making sure people know you're not just going to disappear and not call rewards.
Mhm.
Yeah, probably another good way to do it is to apply for a startup grant that Titan has as well.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay.
And thank you for that. But I'm also looking for organic traffic.
Yeah, it does take a while, and you definitely have to put your time in. I mean, it took me a year before I really had any substantial stake. I mean, at the time, I mean, I was able to get by with, I think it was 35, and then maybe I'm up to 70 LPT, but I was there for a long time, and you got to definitely put some time in and grind for the most part.
Yeah. So thank you. So I guess there's no shortcut. It's always hard work. So
I
I'm
mean,
ready
none
for
that
that.
I've found, but maybe
Yeah.
someone has a secret thing that they're not sharing. But from what I've seen, generally it takes just some time in showing that you're, that people can have confidence. That's one of the main. I mean, again, very important that you're always calling every reward. If they're going to stake with you, they want to make sure they're getting their full value.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say also is just like experimenting with a lot of different things. Getting stake itself is a relatively new concept. Like, a delegated proof of stake hasn't been around for all that long, and it's still very up in the air as to what works. So I would actually go check out other, like, I get most of my inspiration from looking at other ecosystems to see what they're doing well, and just kind of like get inspiration from node operators in different ecosystems, and like try to implement their strategies, or mix the two and create your own, right? Like those, anything to, there's really no set stone on how to attract stake. I mean, you could say the biggest thing that someone could do is know a whale, or get involved, what is it called? Elephant bumping, where you just like go to parties and you find someone who's really rich, and like, yeah, buy this and stake to me. Or you do this whole like public domain where you're this entity, and you do marketing, and you get lots of little stakers. Like what is the right answer? Like I don't think anyone here actually knows. And so yeah, just I would experiment a lot and find out what works, and yeah, just kind of do your own thing.
Yeah, great. Thank you. One way which might be interesting also for you is the webpage stakingrewards.com. They have quite some listings, but the Livepeer listing is quite bad, so they don't list Livepeer orchestrators. But at least they lowered their fees, so it was like $1,000 to get into the page, and now it's free since last month for small validators below $2 million, I think. So maybe
Yeah,
that's also
actually,
interesting.
I had a conversation with them, and they were definitely not willing to add Livepeer nodes. At least when I reached out to them, maybe that's changed. I think they were focused on other things, but they weren't really looking to include like individual node operators for Livepeer there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I will talk to them and also remind them on Livepeer.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I think the more people who reach out to them, the better. It's the perfect place for us to sort of advertise our nodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And if just as a reminder, if you do like Livepeer is on here, I see that it just doesn't include individual nodes. If you do get things listed like this, or you can always apply for grants, or you can also like hopefully we're gonna have more retroactive grant funding programs. So like if you do good things for the network in the future, hopefully you'll be able to retroactively get funded for these things. So yeah, but the question comes around to like gathering stake. Yeah, I don't think anyone has a silver bullet for that. So I think that would just comes down to how creative you want to get, really.
Yeah.
But now you talked about the other aspects like hardware. Do you have any questions around that, or like what other topics did you want to cover around running a strong orchestrator node?
No, I think that's it for today. I'm still experimenting with hardware. Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Does anyone else have any comments or feedback for Thomas around how he could be successful?
I think we pretty much touched on everything. I would say just don't be discouraged if you don't get a ton of stake in the first few months or even a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you get discouraged and you become inactive or you don't experiment and try new things, then you're definitely not gonna get any stake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add like performance can really help a lot too. The low latency. You'd be surprised sometimes how many streams you can get with little stake. When we started out, we were very low on the board, and and we were outperforming I think Papa Bear some days and stuff like that.
Okay.
Not to throw him under the bus.
Hey, no, no, you had you were doing amazing with that single orchestrator. I still am blown away by that.
As well as we went, Papa Bear gave us a little startup grant there, so much appreciated help for him helping us get started. And I think there's a role for all the orchestrators can help out the little nodes as well to help spread out the stake a bit.
Yeah, you're definitely underappreciated by the stakers during that time, and I'm glad it's working out well for you.
All right. Wonderful. I was gonna say also if you extend your time horizon on Livepeer as a protocol in general, you'll be less disappointed. Because like just with anything, it's like if you have a really short time preference, then you tend to get anxiety because you're not getting where you want to get, or you get discouraged and leave the network. Only for 5 years to come around and Livepeer, has a breakthrough, and then it was like, oh man, I used to be in that, and I left. That's happened to me in Bitcoin in like 2013. I got into it, and then like 2017 came around, and I was like, whoa, like, wow, dang, I should have just stuck with this. Like, what was I doing? And so, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this network. Is like, if you just extend your time horizon to like 5-10 years out, then you'll just realize like, hey, like this is just I'm in this for the long run, and so you'll be better off mentally, I think, for a long haul in the ecosystem.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll put the staking reward link in the chat if someone's interested.
Oh, great. I was just looking for that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, let's move on to our last topic, which is Papa Bear, which is updating the default selection algorithm. Papa Bear, do you want to tell us about your topic and get us going?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I mean, Hunter brought up in the in Discord, the just kind of brought up, what wanted to know what the orchestrator's thoughts were about, basically just, I think, I don't remember the exact term he used, but kind of just putting like orchestrators that regularly do not perform in real time, just kind of blacklisting them and just kind of excluding them from the default selection algorithm, which I'm gonna guess that most orchestrators that would probably agree with that. If you're not ever returning your segments in real time, then why waste the time even sending the work to you? But I didn't know if they. I mean, well, I guess we'll just bring that up. Is there anyone that thinks that's not a good idea?
I think it's a good idea. Did Papa Bear go? Where'd he go?
I think we lost him.
Oh,
He's back.
oh, he's coming. He's crawling his way back like the Papa Bear he is. Oh, does he need an invite? Oh, you're back.
I closed the wrong window and shut myself right out of there after I don't know when I got cut off, but
I said yes. I think it's a good idea.
okay. You think it's a good idea? Okay. Is there anything it's not a good idea? Because then my next question. Well, I'll wait for anyone to think it's not a good idea. All right, I'm going to assume I'm going to take that as a no. And then I was just wondering, should it be like what other kind of things is there worth thinking about, or does anyone have any thoughts on? Are there other things that should be changed about the default algorithm? Should it also be put some more weight towards like how close to real time are you, or should it just be like you don't return in real time and we'll just blacklist those and let it roll the way it is?
My
like, should there be
opinion.
a threshold?
My opinion is, it's like really clear. Like if you look at Brad's dashboard, it's like really clear who should not be getting streams. And so to start getting into like, does someone return it within like a 2-second segment in 1 second versus 1.1 second? Like who should we prioritize over that? Like, I think that's a whole different conversation around like performance, but like, I think just this idea of you got awarded like 100 streams and you sent back 0, and then there's like someone with like almost no stake and everything they get sent gets returned back. It's like that's like just like clear elephant in the room. And so like yeah, I think as long as you're getting it back real time, I think there should be basically no difference between the orchestrators. And then, but this is another technical question for like Eli and Transmental of like, okay, if you're going to use WebRTC, like, are we going for like near real time? Like, you know, when Varies gets a segment, I mean, he's sending it back super fast, like faster than my pool ever will. So, like, is that what we're going for, or are we just trying to like are we trying to cater to WebRTC upgrades and this like ultra fast latency, or are we just trying to get people off the network who literally are just like basically hurting it by having so much stake and not returning any segments?
That's a good point, and I think originally I'm talking about the default algorithm, so it probably makes sense just to keep it at like the people that are just egregiously, and it actually one of them has actually disappeared from the from transcoding. There was I brought it up to his attention in Discord, and I mean he had no idea he wasn't transcoding in real time, and just something else came up where he was having a different issue with not being able to call reward, and we thought it might be just related to having his node crashing because it was having issues transcoding on the CPU. And he was one of the big offenders, and he's no longer on the offenders chart anymore. So we're really down to, at this point, it looks like just pretty much one or maybe two nodes that are one that's a really big one, and then a couple maybe smaller ones that are questionable. So it's really almost at this point, it's not as big of an issue as it was, but still, I think it just doesn't make sense to send it to the someone who's basically has transcoding turned on, but in essence isn't really transcoding. More likely, I think it's just a configuration issue on their part, and they may not even really realize what's going on. But then I guess this is the default. If someone like Xenon wants to implement their own selection algorithm or they're welcome to do that if they want to prioritize for, speed or reliability or whatever it is. They certainly have the option to do that. So maybe it's best just to leave that up to broadcasters to tweak beyond the default, and not have several different pre-selected things. Or maybe it's better to have a couple selections that people can choose from. That they don't have to like come up with different decisions and things that they may not be thinking about. Maybe there's some things that are like, are you going for the lowest latency? Choose this algorithm for your selection process. Or do you need the most reliability? Go with this one. Those probably generally go hand in hand though. So
Well, that's another good question. If there's only one orchestrator now that's not doing the work, like ideally when demand goes up and it becomes viable financially, they're going to go, well, wait a minute, we should be doing this work. And then if all 100 orchestrators are doing the work, is this still a problem?
Well, then it won't be. Oh, and that came into the next, I guess the second part was, once you are, I guess, put on that blacklist, how, like, what would be the best procedure for, do they get tested every so often and they get to come back in if they pass their test? Do they have to make a request to be tested? Which I kind of like that idea because it shows that they're at least active and paying attention to what's going on with their node. It's not just kind of just running and, again, so like, I'm guessing if you're failing every single test, that you're probably not really watching your node and you don't really care that much about it. And no need to keep sending tests out to them because they do cost money to send a test. I mean, it's not free. I mean, it does cost money on the network. I mean, so I kind of like the idea of like putting it where if you realize you fell out, you have to make that request. To get put back in if you think that you'll make it. And it just seems like why waste continually testing someone who's not even trying to transcode or doesn't seem to care about it. So that was a part two to it, is like, I guess how bad is it, like what would the threshold be to be egregious enough to be blacklisted? Would it be like 90%? Because I mean, occasionally someone's gonna. I mean, I've got one here. I see I failed, which first time in quite some time. So I mean, it does happen to good transcoders. For it's going over the internet. There's going to be time to time something will come up. And then how does that work? Does it is it over a certain period of time? You get like maybe a timeout, and then after a certain, and then it goes like, if then that clears and then you're good to go. But if it continually happens, if it happens 5 times, then are you blacklisted?
Yeah, I feel like it's a good idea, but at the same time, like, does it need to be in the default selection algorithm? Because what if...
You mean the blacklisting?
Yeah, because what if, like, you're running streams and then all of a sudden, like, what if your internet connection goes down and the node goes, hey, nobody sent me back these things in real time, you're all blacklisted, and then the whole thing just spirals out of control and shuts down. And as a broadcaster, as an app developer, you're like, whoa, what just happened? And so you're like digging through this, trying to like, I have to like, restart my node because some weird like loop glitch thing happened. And it's like, do we want that to be as a default or an opt-in, or like how would we want that to work?
Well, I think I mean, we do have issues that come up like that with Video Miner, and Marco could probably speak to it a lot better than I can. But if we get a certain percentage of transcoders that have dropped into what we call jail, we reset everyone and everyone gets a shot again. So that way the network can't just be like, there's no one available.
Right.
So you can have something like that built into it if it's happening on the broadcaster side. Is that what you're talking about? If the broadcaster were to go down and then show that
Sure. I mean,
the
yeah. I don't know. I'm just trying to
well,
think like
in that
outside
case,
the
it would
box.
probably. I mean, likely it probably would be not. Um, I mean, I guess maybe Varus would be an exception, but have tons of streams going to a single broadcaster at any given time. So it would probably be below what I could probably think would be a fair threshold to put someone on that list. It does seem like this issue was more of an issue a couple weeks ago than it is now. Looking at the New York East Coast one's down right now, so I'm only looking at the EU one. But I mean, I still think it's a good idea, just even if it's for one or two transcoders. It just, I mean, it just hurts the network if it's someone that's just not performing well on a regular basis. And when it's a bigger orchestrator, they're actually winning some money from that because the ticket gets sent out with that first segment. So, might as well give that money to someone who's actually performing and benefiting the network. Because they do actually win tickets even though they're not transcoding, because they're still getting that chance with that first ticket, and they get a good percentage of first streams, which again slows down the network because it's got to wait a few seconds before it switches over to the next person. I mean, in whole, the network is very reliable when you look down the list. I mean, there's very few swaps that happen.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think Hunter was saying.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter brought it up, and what'd you say?
I think Hunter said he was going to come here, but I don't know. Maybe we
Yeah, I
got
mean,
to get him
I
over
don't.
here for like a Q&A
Yeah,
session.
I mean, I was kind of bringing this up as unofficial. I didn't know if there would maybe be something scheduled with Hunter to do it. To have go through actual point by point. I was just more of a kind of like a pre talk between whoever's in here now.
I guess the question is, do we noticeably see hindrance to the network with the current selection algorithm, including someone with a lot of stake not doing work? Like, I mean,
well, it's hard to really measure. I mean, I will tell you that when like this 8905 gets a stream, it's going to take longer before the viewer gets to start seeing that stream. So yeah, I mean, in that aspect, yeah, there's definitely a performance hit for that. And when there were two of them, and they were getting, they're two of the higher staked orchestrators, it definitely would slow down that time before the stream starts for an end user, which we don't want. I mean, will it still work? Yes, but is it optimized? No.
There you go. I don't know the answer. I guess, are we willing to invest time and resources in this rather than something else?
Well, hasn't this been an issue for a long time?
It's been an issue for a long time, yeah. I mean, it's been brought up. I mean, people talk about it. I mean, Hunter brought it up, so I figure he was something that he was interested in implementing. It sounded like the way he brought it up too. I think it was in a way where it was like, is anyone kind of disagree with this? Like, because
no, I mean, I think the general consensus was this is an issue and it should be resolved.
Well, there
I
you
mean,
go.
that was kind of my feel. I don't think it's very hard to implement, especially if you just say it's a blacklist based on if you hit this parameter. And again, remember, this is all per broadcaster because everyone operates in different regions and stuff. And so if you have one node and it's in LA and you're getting a stream sent to you from Singapore, which I guess you probably wouldn't in production, but
oh, right. I totally forgot about that idea too. It was like, if you're like, let's say you're an independent broadcaster and you're spinning up a node in, let's pick a pretty far-flung place compared to Livepeer ingest nodes. You're starting a node up in like Sydney, Australia. Like you're still really far away from Singapore, and you're really far away from it. You're far away from everybody.
Yeah.
So
you're not even going to get selected. So that's different.
Like if you're running,
you're gonna Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like not only are you far away from the closest nodes, like nobody in New York, London, like none of these places are even going to be remotely like that broadcaster should not listen to, not wait for responses from those nodes.
They don't. They don't. I mean, I mean, they'll have a working set before like that. So
Oh,
like
right.
they don't they're naturally almost blacklisted. I mean, they
Right.
don't actually go on a blacklist, but they're never eligible. So this is for people that are getting selected and then not performing. So it's a
Oh,
different.
right. So
It's
this is a
different than
node
being
that's close enough, but
right.
then just never ever sending something back. And
Right.
because the performance is based on per stream, the
Right now it's per stream. So like you're
yeah, so it
eligible
should
again on
be
the next
per
stream that comes in
orchestrator.
per broadcaster or orchestrator. Yeah.
Per orchestrator on each broadcaster.
On each broadcaster. Right.
And then, okay, so then we want to reset that broadcaster. How do we do that as orchestrators? Would we want to send a transaction and it would be public on chain, and so that all the broadcasters associated with that ETH address would say, okay, we're going to reopen this up and try again?
I mean, I haven't thought it through, but that was kind of my thought, was to like have it as a CLI option where you just you make that request, and I mean whether you have to pay for it or not, I guess that's up for debate. But it just makes it where there's a little incentive to not just be
Because sending out test streams to some big boy that doesn't do transcoding seems like a waste of resources.
right. That was kind of that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah. Now I think we're on the same page with how we think it should be implemented. But who's gonna? Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think it's a good idea. And then it would be nice. Then orchestrators, I think it would just be an upgrade for us orchestrators to be able to like reset our statistics with broadcasters based on one transaction. You know, we could say like, hey, I've made an update. Please unblacklist me, and allow me back into your working set. Here's $5. You know.
Yeah, and in all likelihood, I mean, I think it would be a pretty rare case where someone who performs fairly well gets blacklisted. Where like what you're talking about, where asking basically to get put back in would be maybe if you upgraded your, or moved an orchestrator to a different location, where now you think it's going to perform okay in a region where you've been blacklisted from, to kind of reset. Because I mean, again, looking at just Brad's charts, and the other thing we have to consider is that Brad's are only 10 segments. It may look completely different when you open when Livepeer opens this up to when you have streams that are thousands of segments. You may get a lot more unstable internet connections and stuff like that. I would imagine, especially for home connections, people that are running out of their houses. So things may look different when you're seeing production stuff versus 10 segments. A lot of times you may get throttling from your ISP, things like that. So that's kind of, I'm getting a little bit off topic there, but in general, I don't think you'd have to make a request very often, based on at least the numbers that we're seeing now from Brad's testing.
Right. Well, I think,
and remember, it's only if you get a stream and drop it. It's not if you're turned off, you're not getting penalized for that.
right. It's only if you are returning segments that are no good.
Right. It's basically I'm asking for a segment, but I can't return it. You're like, if you think about it in those terms, rather than I'm doing maintenance, I'm turned off. I'm not asking for you to send me anything. Don't send me anything, because I'm working on something. So
no, it's a good idea.
All right. Well, we will maybe get Hunter in here to see.
Maybe we need to. Should we formalize this into a post so that it's kind of, we have a place to discuss it?
Probably a good idea.
Who
I
else
wanted
to
to
do
bounce
that?
it around in here a little bit. I can do that. I mean, there's a little discussion going on, that Hunter brought up in Discord, but maybe we put it onto the forum.
I feel like this one just is deserving of a proper post.
I can do that.
Very cool.
I would tend to agree a little bit because recently the computer that was running the Closed Media orchestrator completely blew itself up. So I had to replace everything. And so I was running a subpar computer basically. And so it would be nice now to then refresh my my transcoding abilities to broadcasters based on the new upgraded equipment that the node's got. So I'm kind of on I think it's a great idea to be able to just, update now and then with the fact that you've got on the system or you're back online in a better.
Yeah, and again, the way it currently works is you're really I mean, there's no penalty. So like if right now, like if you updated your and put a new system in, you're good to go. You wouldn't have to make a request, at least right now, the way it works. So if you were getting streams and dropping them, then you would, based on the new system, have to make that request, or if it's done just on a periodic thing, whichever way Livepeer wants to do it. But the way it works now is you fix your stuff, you're good to go. I mean, it's really only you're only hurt for one stream right now if you aren't performing right.
Right. So maybe I missed the conversation on the blacklisting part. So if like a broadcaster tests your node and then you're blacklisted, they'll that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah,
Is that
well,
what,
this isn't
or
even
did I
this
miss
isn't even
that?
yeah, I mean, well, the way it works now is just like if work is coming into a broadcaster and you can't transcode in real time, they just say, all right, we're not going to send this same stream to you again. But when the next stream comes out, if you're able to respond to it in time, you're eligible to get that stream. This is if you continually receive a stream and fail it, then we want to, or the proposal would be that the broadcaster would just would stop even sending you the request to do the transcoding for them. I don't know if I made sense there. Because it's two separate things. It's one is the way it works now, and one is the way that we're talking about switching it to. But I mean, right now, if you fix your computer, I mean, the broadcaster doesn't have any knowledge that you were performing poorly in the past. This would be so that basically it kind of keeps a history, and you would have to like say, all right, I fixed it. Now test me again. Let me back in.
Right. I guess unless you're on a manual selection process from the broadcaster. I guess, yeah, this new implementation you're going for is more to cut out people that aren't transcoding at all. Or just doing it badly.
I mean, the main thing, it's really just about like if you're just always performing badly, to just take you out of the selection process. And
right.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, in my opinion, it's just to make the network work better.
Well, thank you.
Excellent.
There is currently a webhook for orchestrator selection, I believe. I think Eli was talking a little bit about that too.
Right, but that's just not the way that it works by default right now. Is like
right.
That's I think that's what Hunter was originally talking about, was just using using the default to basically exclude people that that just well, for orchestrators that just continually perform bad, just to take them out of the selection completely.
Makes sense. Yeah, update it in the default.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was some that was the part that wasn't really finished, was that how do they get a chance to come back in? That's really the kind of the looming question. I think everyone agrees they should be excluded from selection, but it's
you could put a longer penalty on it. They're doing super bad.
Like it just kind of it just kind of goes up like every like first time maybe you get an hour, and the next time it's 2 hours, and then 4 hours, and eventually it's you don't get a chance for a month. I mean that's an option too.
Yeah, that feels about right.
Because again, it doesn't I mean, it doesn't make the network not work, but it doesn't work optimally when it goes to a node that isn't. And another issue is, you remember, it's not always the first stream. It could be you were with someone, they were transcoding fine, you're 100 segments in, and now you start buffering when it's switching to another transcoder. So you just, I mean, you want to really try and eliminate that as much as possible. Because when
Yeah.
you do switch transcoders, that first stream that transcoder get, it takes longer to get going because of the warm up process that to get everything going on that for that first segment. So it's just less buffering.
That's where it does affect users if it's hopping too much.
Right, like if someone has to wait a little bit longer for the stream to start, yeah, it's not optimal, but okay, fine. But it does suck, like when you're watching it, and like if it starts switching between different orchestrators, and you get that buffering that people don't are used to. That people are used to now seeing like really smooth running video, and that's what they expect. And whatever we can do to provide that for Livepeer, I think it's helpful. I'll write something up that's a little more coherent than I'm speaking right now, at least hopefully, and I'll put it in the forum and see if we can get a discussion going.
Let's go ahead and end it here. We've been at this for 2 hours, so I do appreciate you all being here, making this world a better and more decentralized place. And yeah, this was a great conversation filled with lots of information. So we will see you all next week. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.